everyone, and welcome to another incredible episode on Rise with Hanna Olivas. I'm your host, Hanna, and we are still doing the She Wins Nice Girls Finish First mini campaign for Women's History Month and International Women's Day. And we have really brought to you, I wholeheartedly believe this, the best of the best women who are leading by example and how to be a nice girl, nice woman in business, life and business. And so I'm joined today with Melanie Klein. She is an author, a TEDx speaker. She's an incredible woman, and I'm so excited to dive in today and just share what she's been up to and get her perspective on what it means when she wins Nice Girls Finish First. So welcome to the show, Melanie, and thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Hanna. I've been really looking forward to having this conversation.
So my very first question to you is really more about what you do, the heart of your work. And you have been called the empowerment mentor, the truth sayer, and the consciousness raiser. And I just kind of wanted you to share with the viewers what that means, and share a little bit more about you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So if we go back, I can really say that for the last, it's 2025, 31 years, I have been very deeply committed to doing women's advocacy work, women's leadership work, and being, as I mentioned in my TEDx, being a link in that chain of empowerment and possibility. That was a really potent moment when I first met my own mentor in undergraduate school, this incredibly confident woman who just blew me away with her ability to lead, enjoy, and her intelligence, the way that she took up space. And I was so moved by that I knew that I wanted to do this work in some form for the rest of my life. And I have held true to that promise. And the central hub, if you will, of all of the different spokes of my work over the years has been empowerment work. So given that, I have been a professor of gender, women's studies, and sociology. I have curated and published 4 anthologies with over 130 writers total. I have created talks. I have been part of summits. I have my TEDx. And in the most recent form, in the last 10 years, I have been working one-on-one with clients, mostly entrepreneurs, visionaries. And all of that, all of those different things that I've done over the last 30 years is all connected. Every single spoke plugs back into empowerment work. And empowerment work for me is about how can every person that reads my books, hears my talk, coaches with me, or has been a student of mine feel the most capable of taking up space, cultivating their own voice, using it, and creating in the world something that not only fulfills them, but is also something that creates an impact on the collective. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I've held true to, like I said, for over 30 years at this point.
So you have said you love your work, the world, your clients, without a shadow of a doubt. And I just want to know what fuels you to want to continue in this arena.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I fiercely love what I do. It's funny. One of my clients and I were texting back and forth, and I was getting ready to do an interview last week, and I was sharing something about my day. She said, it is just so evident, not only in the way that you communicate with me and that you support me, but just listening to you talk about what you do, how much you enjoy it. And it is wholeheartedly true because, again, this was not just an idle or, mundane decision that I made for myself. As I mentioned in my TEDx, that moment where I decided to be a link in that chain of empowerment and possibility came like a lightning bolt, like a thunderclap. It was something that was compelling to me. And so that feeling of being compelled by this bigger vision in which myself and other individuals and we as a collective are empowered and we're creating good in the world and we're amplifying each other's work and we're celebrating each other's wins is something that was not a passing, trend or, just a passing fancy of mine. It was something that was so deeply compelling and I have been incredibly devoted to because it has such a high level of meaning. And part of that is simply in terms of how my life transformed when I met my first mentor and I was a part of that kind of work, that kind of environment, that kind of, relationship, in that case, mentor to mentee, teacher to student. I just thought, wow, there are so many things that can be transformed when we're part of a network of, people who are very intentionally and mindfully committed to creating change. Why would I want anything else? What would ever stop me? Right. And so, I continue because there's so much joy to be had. There's so much impact to be made. And there's such an incredible amount of satisfaction and fulfillment that happens from the work that I do that, I can't imagine ever wanting to do anything else.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So your mission is to guide others into their most amplified and expansive version of themselves.
Yes.
And listening to you talk about just how much you love what you do, what are some of the biggest transformations that you've witnessed through the clients that you've worked with?
There are so many asking for what they actually want, maintaining their boundaries, keeping promises to themselves, building and creating, having and doing things that they couldn't have even imagined when they first walked in the door to working with me, whether that's creating a team, expanding a team, increasing their own revenue stream, the opportunities that they have to lead and to be a role model within their community, the ripple effect that they begin to see as they either one, take new leadership roles and what that happens to the people around them, right? By proxy, the ability to potentially create intergenerational wealth, to invest in their communities. We know there's lots of studies that show that when women increase their own wealth, the way that they invest in their communities is different and it has an impact on a collective scale. I think generally speaking, the way they get to surpass their own expectations and the joy from being able to do that, the freedom, the liberation of going, you know what? I am smart enough. I am capable enough. This can happen. I can trust in myself, but I can also trust in this community of individuals that I have created in my life. That to me is really incredible. And I know for me, being someone as a young woman, and I'm talking about in my early teens, someone who did not think they were smart enough, someone who did not think she, i.e. me, was capable enough, at one point thinking that my best sort of guarantee to be, to get through life was to get married because I did not feel that I could make it in the world on my own. It felt too scary. It felt too intimidating. I didn't know how that could be possible, to being a woman who has published 4 books, who has had a TEDx, who was a successful professor for 20 plus years, who was involved. I did a lot of volunteer work with Global Girl Media, with Proud to Be Me and the National Eating Disorders Association. I had gotten several grants where I put on ecofeminism events, to being of the support and guide for so many incredible people in my coaching business. And when I look at that I went from that previous version to this version, I had felt so compelled to be able to share with others the opportunity for them to do that in their own way, right? To fill in their own details. That to me is like the ultimate success, that I could go from feeling I wasn't capable to being able to sit here with you right now, Hanna, and even feeling comfortable using my voice and being able to then reflect on, I think, things that my younger self would have never in a million years would have imagined was possible. That's the goodness. That's the richness, right? That's the beauty of all of this.
That's you winning.
Yes.
That's you winning, and anyone who you are working with is winning. That's what I hear. It's like
Yes.
it's this ripple. So since this series is all about women rising, what do you think, especially in 2025, is one of the biggest barriers that women are facing, especially in the entrepreneurship space, when it comes to stepping into their own power and how they can overcome it and really be that woman that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think I always say that as a trained sociologist, I'm never going to be someone who glosses over the fact that there are structural and systemic
Mhm.
obstacles that have existed, that continue to exist, and that potentially will increase depending on, how things unfold over the coming years. And with that said, even acknowledging the structural and systemic obstacles, what I find is so often the internalized, right, blocks,
Mhm.
the way that we have, sort of formulated our own self identity based on the narrative around, I'm going to say the negative narratives around women, the
Yeah.
space that they should occupy, how much space they should take up, meaning that yes, there is still, a thread of empowerment that runs through, I would say, pop culture and, the larger culture, but there seems to be this limit of, and a ceiling of how far that can be. And we take that in and we start to believe that about ourselves. So when I shared that, my younger version of me didn't necessarily think she was capable or, she was confident enough or etc. There was nobody explicitly in my life talking about family of origin telling me, but the larger narrative that I took in over and over as part of the socialization process had created an identity where I saw myself in that light. And so I think there continues to be, given the individuals that I work with, incredibly intelligent, incredibly capable women who still tend to doubt themselves, right?
Mhm.
That is part of, we have to take a look at that internal narrative and switch that internal narrative. We need to, right, swap out that, soundtrack that's been playing for X number of years and replace it with something that is very affirming, is very positive, is something where there is a sense of, I am capable, and that we do that for each other. So I think that, spaces for women, led by women, and celebration with women in very intentional ways, because I've been with women in groups where it was, this is a group of women, but this is a women's group, and there's something
Yes.
different, just a group of women versus a
Yeah.
women's group. And I think those intentional women's groups where it's like, hey, we're going to come together to share our wins and unpack some things. We're going to go ahead and really hold space for each other. Those things have always been necessary, and they are even more needed than ever. And that's something that I really, try to cultivate. In fact, the beginning of this year, I had started a series for women that really is going through this process, because it was like, we still need to be doing this.
Yeah, we do. Yes, absolutely. Now more than ever. I think I always say I'm a season tour. I just hit the 50s club and I love it.
Welcome.
Right?
Yeah.
But I feel like we have this duty to the next generation of women coming up to really show them, like, hey, you can have a successful business. You can have successful connections. You can do all of these things that you want to do without tipping another woman's crown,
Yeah.
without showing that it has to be perfection. And that's the whole point of this series, honestly, is just really changing the narrative of how women are speaking to one another. But ladies who are season tours, we have a duty to really teach our younger generation coming up that it is okay to be kind. It is okay to help elevate and inspire other women. And I like how you gave the example of a group of women and a group of women. Like, that is so true.
Group of women or women's group.
Yes. I mean, I think that you couldn't have said it any better. Um, it's really interesting to see how accomplished women, they kind like, I always told myself no matter what I do in business, no matter how big it gets, humility
Mm-hmm.
had to be the key in all of this. You know, it's not who we know, it's who we are. And that humility thing just always has stuck with me, which I think is why I connected to you so much. There's people that I follow on Instagram and there's people I follow. You're one of those that I really follow and I learn and I see like how your messaging, how you're talking to people, and it's so different from some of the other ones that are out there. And so this is important. So here's my next question. There's this myth, this thing that's going around, and people, you know, women are being told, hey, if you're too nice, if you're too collaborative, it's seen as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
What do we say to that? What do you say to that? How do we change that narrative?
Well, you know, let me say this, Hannah. I'm going to answer that, but I want to go back to what you had said around, you know, that we can be powerful, we can be potent, and we don't have to tip someone else's crown, right? I think that alone comes from such a scarcity model that there isn't enough, that we need to be envious, we need to be in competition, that we need to knock somebody off. And I think, you know, the 1980s, as women were coming out of the second wave of feminism, the women's liberation movement to the 1980s, it really went from being a movement to isolated individual women, specifically going into these male dominated spaces where, you know, there just wasn't a collective sort of sense of solidarity. And we saw that really actually harmed women's progress and women's relationships. So I like to look at that as a reminder of, you know, why it's so important to do that, and that it is possible for us to be individually empowered without having power over someone else. And so I look at, you know, the idea of being kind or nice. I actually use the word poised and gracious is the way that I oftentimes look at it. We can be gracious, which means we are, you know, celebrating others. And that graciousness doesn't mean that we're giving anything away, we're diminishing ourselves. And I think it just is a shift from looking at things from the sense of being a vertical hierarchy or having this ranking system, that being something, just starting to look at the world and ourselves as just more collaborative in general. And so, you know, what we express or what we do isn't within that ranking, but it's more of a sharing. And so I think that's really huge. And funny enough, I was just before you and I got on, Hannah, I was prepping my set of reflection questions for that women's virtual series that I've been doing for the last few months. And this third installment of 4 is on sacred community and, you know, kind of collaboration. And so I have these reflection questions. And then the bonus action that I just wrote was commit to reflecting back the power, beauty, and shine to at least one woman each day. And I find that has been a powerful practice for me, is not only to feel empowered within myself and to change the narrative of how I speak to myself, but also to change the narrative of how I relate to and speak to other women. So I really make a point very consciously, very intentionally, to acknowledge women through eye contact, through a smile, to say something about her that is just, you know, outside of, let's say, how she looks, and reflect back to her. And it is such an amplification process where we are reflecting back to women the ways in which they shine. They're reflecting it back to us. And so that's what I mean by there is just this wonderful, expansive amplification that happens that is so joyous. It is so liberating, that I really hope that everyone sort of takes that into account and, you know, practices that on the day-to-day and then reports back to you and I how that goes and what that changes for them.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. You know, this conversation has been so powerful. I knew it would be, though. I knew that having you on and just really doing like a deeper dive, way deeper than surface. What is the one thing that you would tell women today about kindness, collaboration, the nice girls versus that scarcity mindset? What would you say, like, to just nip it? when those women are, because sometimes I feel like they don't even know they're doing it. So what is something that we can just say, hey, you know what? There's enough for everyone. You are worthy, because a lot of it, I think, comes from, it is scarcity, but it's also them not feeling the worthiness. And so they seek that validation, that instant gratification. If another woman is doing better than them at the time, when someone's doing better than me, it's my natural thing to just say, good for you. Like, keep going. How can we support you? What can I do? Like, I'm just like so excited for them, but not everyone has that mentality. So what's that? Is it a switch? Is it a word? What is it that we could really just share to say, hey, nice girls do finish first, and we just need to cut out the mean girl stuff?
Yeah, I like to say we're all connected. We're all connected. We're all worthy. And when one person wins, we all win. You know, when you were talking about some of my work, I thought, and you were talking about my clients winning, I was looking at you and thinking, and, you know, you're winning and I'm winning. When you're empowered, I win. When I'm empowered, you win. When my clients are empowered, I win, and so do you, because then we have more self-actualized, confident people operating in the world. So just understanding our connection, and instead of going into competition, recognizing, oh, I'm just 1 degree of separation away from what she's created, what she has. Sometimes my clients, you know, they start to feel some imposter syndrome or comparison. And so I will share some of my other client wins with someone who needs it, remind them, hey, you're just 1 degree of separation. You're both working with the same coach. So look at this as inspiration. Look at this as something you can aspire to. What can you learn from here? How can you elevate your own sense of self, knowing you are just 1 degree of separation? We're all connected. We're all worthy. And when one person wins, we all win. It's a really freeing way to look at things. And the results show it. They really, really do.
I couldn't agree more. I knew it was going to be amazing to have you on today. So thank you for joining me. So how can we support you? Do you have any upcoming projects? Where can people connect?
For sure. They can go follow me on Instagram at Mel Klein. That's Klein. There is my TEDx. If people want to watch it, share it, comment on it. It's always great to get that out. And I will say, creating and delivering that talk was so meaningful to me. The message is so heartfelt. That is a way to share the love and share the possibility of empowerment by viewing it and sharing it. Also, I have several projects coming up, so I would just stay tuned to what some of those are. And of course, if anyone is interested in working with me one-on-one, they're more than welcome to reach out or go to my website, melanieclein.com, and they are more than they're more than welcome to go ahead and submit an application. So those would be some of the ways that you can support. And also go check out my books. I have Yoga and Body Image. It came out in 2014. Yoga Rising came out in 2018. Yoga and Embodied Social Change came out in 2016. And then Yoga and Resilience, Embodied Resilience came out in 2020. So there's 4 different books on empowerment, resilience, and, you know, ways to build our confidence. So if you're interested in any of those books, that's another wonderful way.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Melanie. It's truly been an honor to talk to you. And for all of our listeners and viewers, remember this: nice girls do finish first. If she wins, you win. And kindness is not a weakness. It's honestly a strategy for success. My name is Hanna Olivas, and it was good to have you here, Melanie. And happy Women's History Month to everyone, and go and win.